don't think it is dependent on context because universalism is more parsimonious.
Okay. And are these kind of moral facts? Are they like abstract? Are they natural? What are they?
I would say that I'll lean towards them being non-natural, given the fact that I just don't take it to be the case that like holding a naturalistic perspective of the moral facts.
Right. Okay, but
Moral.
so it is correct to characterize your view as saying that there are categorical reasons to act.
Not under the way I defined it a while ago, but again, if you want to define categorical reasons as like some other, like it seems as if you're saying that because you're supposed to realism, you say that it is committed to this position. I don't think that is true. But you could say that my position or my type of robust realism is committed to that specific thesis. But that was speaking
like
generally,
if you
it say that it does not necessarily commit to that specific proposition.
Like if you said that something is good, you said that if you said you should do something, the reason as to why you should do it, there is no like goal that it has to relate to. It just simply is a fact that you should do it.
Right? Yeah, it's just true in virtue of certain moral principles which are not constructed by humans' beliefs or goals.
Okay, cool. What's the argument for that view?
So basically, the argument for why the proposition for moral realism is going to be true is based off an inductive case from evidence-based deliberations, right? It's like we have like we see like a pattern in reality, which is that like when you look at like evidence-based deliberations, they are motivated by objective facts and they report objective facts about their respective domains. And moral deliberations are evidence-based, so more than likely moral realism is true given the inductive data available.
Okay, so sorry, the induction is that you see that there are these different fields, and in these fields,
every single observation we see of evidence-based deliberations reports on objective facts is going to be more and more evidence which favors moral realism.
Right.
It's just so inductive probability work.
Are you taking evidence to be like an inference?
Yep.
Like exclusively or
inclusively? Yeah.
Okay, so you have different types of evidence as well.
I guess it seems as if like you're invoking like some weird notion, so I guess under that weird notion maybe, but like
I'm just asking.
By inference, it just means something which supports a conclusion being sure, like some reason for believing in the conclusion. Then I'll just take it to be the case that inferences and evidence are the same thing insofar as all evidences are inferences, but not all inferences are evidence.
Okay. Okay, so the majority, you said like every other field, right? That's the idea. Every other field is talking about objective facts.
Yep.
Okay. And so it's more likely that moral realism is talking about moral facts or objective facts?
It's more likely that moral deliberations, which are evidence-based, which would be a part of the category of evidence-based deliberations, would be things which report objective facts about its respective domain, which would, in other words, be objective moral facts.
Objective facts and its respective domain. Well, like, I'm assuming you take mental states to be a kind of objective fact of the world, right?
But majority of these deliberations are not things which are psychological, by the way. They're not about mental states, so.
Sorry, like in all domains, or are you saying about morality?
Yeah, but even if it was to be something which could be about mental states, that's relevant to the claim. Because I'm saying,
well,
like,
if you take mental states to be a type of objective fact, then it seems like subjectivism is consistent with.
No, I'm saying that you can have objective facts about mental states. You can make like propositions about mental states, and the truth makers of those propositions are mind independent.
Yeah, but when you say that you're talking, all these other domains, they talk about objective facts. Like, psychology is obviously talking about your mental states, but
by objective facts, all I mean there, and we've already went over this. All I mean there are just facts, whereas the truth makers for these propositions, which are the facts themselves, are not going to be mind independent.
Well, presumably truths about like your emotional well-being are mind dependent, right? Like it depends on the state of your mind.
I don't see why the truth makers for emotional well-being has to be mind dependent.
Because the truth maker is your emotion.
Why does the truth maker have to be
Why does the truth maker for your emotional well-being have to be emotion?
Yep.
That's like analytically true. I don't know how else to explain that to you.
How so?
Because the thing in question you're talking about is the emotion. which is obviously mind
Do you
dependent.
think so? Hold on there a second. You think that like the reference of a proposition has to be the truth maker for that proposition?
Yeah, and yeah. Wait, sorry. Say that again.
Do you think reference that are being referenced by a proposition has to be the truth makers for propositions?
Yeah, I take that to be generally the case, unless maybe you have a counterexample that's accounted for in the inductive evidence. But
Wait, hold on. But you're saying that like the arguments here I have to be making here is that it has to be the case
yeah,
because you're
you could
saying
say
it is
that in the same.
analytically true.
You could say that in the same inductive. Actually, we could just change it like this. In the same inductive body of evidence, I'd also take it to be the case that they're generally the truth makers for the statement as the reference.
Okay, cool. And that
Right.
wouldn't suffice
We could hold the
proving the
same.
claim that it is the case. Hold on there a second. You're making the claim that it is necessarily the case that a reference are the truth makers for propositions.
Look, we don't have to commit. We can just change that. We don't have to argue
You,
something strong like
so
that.
it is not analytically true, just to be clear on
Sure.
this.
Yeah. So I think it's analytically true, but we don't have to hold for that for the discussion. Like, we could just
Okay.
say that in the same inductive body of evidence, the truth maker for those propositions are the reference. Unless you can give me counterexamples in all the different
How
fields
is
of
this an
knowledge, because
objection
I'm
towards
unaware
my
of
view?
one. Oh, well, sorry. I'm just wondering if whether you accept that or not. Because if you do, then we could talk about how the truth
I'm
maker for
asking like how is this an
psychology is your
objection
mental
towards
state.
the data available which favors more realism?
The reason why is because your thing you're trying to explain, the inductive evidence, that's consistent with a subjectivist view in which the moral facts truth maker are your preferences.
Insist with that view.
Pardon?
Because in the data I'm appealing to, the majority of the moral deliberations would not be psychological based, would not be based off mental states.
Yeah, but alas, you think
The data
psychology still tracks the
I'm
truth
appealing
of
to
your
would
mental
not be
states, right?
consistent. What do you think of this opinion?
Well, do you think psychology is talking about your mental
Psychology of
states?
wait, hold on there a second. Hold on there a second. Hold on there a second. Just to be clear, the psychological deliberations we're talking about, right? You think those are evidence based?
Do I think psychology is evidence based?
No, I'm asking you. Do you think the psychological deliberations you're talking about is evidence based?
Yeah, I think that when psychologists make statements about your mental states, that's evidence based.
So hold on there a second, just to be clear on this, right? So do you think that what makes that proposition like for example, if a psychologist say that like you're feeling X emotion, right? Right. Insofar as like they think that like you're in pain right now. Do you
Uh-huh.
think that what makes that proposition true is going to be their opinions or beliefs?
No, it's going to be your mental state.
But the way in which I initially defined mind independence is just going to be something which does not depend on opinions or beliefs.
Yeah, the truth of your emotional well-being depends on your mental states. I mean, do you consider? I mean, okay, I guess maybe you think. Okay, I guess emotions aren't an opinion or belief. Presumably, they fall under a subjectivist camp, but that's fine. Um,
So hold on there a second, just to be clear on this. You think that fact of the matter depends on the speaker's like emotions?
I'm not talking about the speaker. The truth maker is an emotion.
Wait, hold on. But the subjectivist model is going to be making some claim primarily about the facts that like the facts of the matter is going to be reducible to like some preferences, correct?
Yeah, the subjectivist is going to say that.
Yes. Generally speaking, it would be the case, right? That psychological deliberations are going to be things which are fixed by the emotions.
Sorry, you said your mic is cutting out. What was the last statement?
Are you saying that generally is my mic better now?
Yeah, slightly. It just keeps cutting out.
Okay, cool. So I was cutting out the entire time or majority of the time?
Yeah.
No. Your mic's been good.
Okay, cool. So I was just asking, like, are you saying the psychological deliberation, like by truth makers? It seems as if you're talking about truth makers in the sense whereas you're saying that like what makes these propositions sure going to be something which is based off the reference or something is based off like what the thing is talking about. So, like if I'm saying that like this person is feeling X emotion, what makes the proposition true is the emotion there, right?
Uh-huh.
Cool. So like I think that what makes the proposition true, right, is not like the emotion, right? It's just the sentence satisfying its structural conditions or structural role, I should say.
Is the structural conditions of
Just the
of the statement not the emotion?
yeah, I think yeah. So I just think in that specific case, like when I'm saying like for example, Divinity is in pain right now, that claim specifically is not going to be based on like one's emotions insofar as what makes the proposition sure, right, is the emotion itself. It's the relation between divinity and the emotions in such a way whereas divinity in that specific case obtains the state of affairs of experiencing X emotion.
How is that
And
any
that
different?
relation itself is
How
not,
is that any
yeah, that
different?
relate, hold on. I'm saying that, yeah, there's a difference. You're basically confusing the relata with the relation, right? So the relata of the emotion itself is not going to be the same as the relation between divinity
Yeah, but it's
and
still
the specific
dependent.
emotion
Sure,
itself,
sure,
which is not
sure,
going to be
sure. You
something
could
which is
sure
based on.
there's a nuanced difference you can draw, but the fact of the matter is that the
Yep.
truth maker is still dependent on the mind, right? Like it's dependent on the emotion there. Maybe it doesn't refer specifically to the emotion. Maybe it's the relationship that the emotion has to me, but nevertheless, the relationship is still mind dependent.
The relationship is still mind dependent. If you're talking about the relationship in so far as well, because one of the relata is going to be something which is mental, and because it is mental, then obviously it's going to be the case that it is mind dependent. And you could talk about it in that sense, and say, yeah, trivially that would be the case. But when
Uh-huh.
I'm talking about mind dependency and something being the mind independent fact, usually I'm talking about the fact that the relation itself does not depend on the opinions of others.
Yeah, but I want to clarify that
Yeah.
if you're talking about, subjectivism as opposed to independence, like you're trying to exclude all these
Mhm.
different types of mental states, not just beliefs and opinions. You're including like emotions, desire, whims. Like those are things you also want to exclude, right?
Pardon?
You're according to the robust realist project, you're also trying to exclude desires.
You bugged out, or is it me?
Apollo's aura.
Yeah, sorry, I got called. Like presumably you're gonna want to establish that preferences and desires are also not truth makers for moral propositions.
Yeah, I don't think the preferences and desires are truth makers in the sense I'm talking about. I can
Right,
just
but
give like an obvious case of like a subjective, like something which is subjective, like a proposition which is going to be something which you could say fits like a subjectivist role. Like if you say like more like something is good, right? If I say like how should I put this? So when I say that something tastes good, for example, all I'm saying right there is something like I desire X, right?
uh-huh.
That's what I mean right there. So in that case, right? If one of the reference are going to be something which are metaphysically identical to preferences, right? Insofar as like the goodness thing is going to be something which is metaphysically identical to preferences, then sure, right? But in the case of like moral deliberations and majority of the deliberations that we see, like even like majority of deliberations for one is like non-psychological deliberations, just to be clear, right? So like majority of the deliberations we know of, which are evidence based, by the way, they're not going to be something which includes like the primary reference is going to be something which is metaphysically identical to something of preferences or desires or maybe evolutionary dispositions or something like that.
Yeah, sure, but I just want to clarify that your inductive evidence isn't evidence against psychologists talking about mental states, right?
It's evidence against moral anti-realism being true.
No, no, I'm asking if it's evidence against, like if I had tried running this same kind of inductive argument against, psychology and said psychologists are really talking about mind independent facts here. Like you would say that argument that's not actually evidence against it.
We have independent reasons. We have independent reasons which would affect the probability scale to believe that the psychological deliberations are about mental states.
Okay, so the argument is you do think that the argument lowers the probability of
It
psychology
lowers the
talking about
probability
mental
of moral
states?
anti-realism because there's no
I'm asking
established
here about
or
I'm
there's no
asking here about
introduced.
mental states.
Of course it does.
Okay, so the argument lowers the probability of psychologists talking about mental states?
All else being equal, sure.
Okay. Because they're talking about objective facts of the matter.
Do you understand what I mean right there, right?
Yeah, something that's mind independent.
And do you understand that I'm not saying that it is actually the case that psychological deliberations are most likely not about mental states?
Yeah, yeah. You want to say that there's independent reasoning against it?
Yes, there are several independent reasons for believing to the contrary, which would affect the probability of that being true. So yeah, it would be the case basically that all else being equal, that would lower the probability of that proposition. But at the same time, it would be the case that the vast majority of non-psychological deliberations, which favors my position, would actually be evidence for moral realism, given the fact that there's no introduced probability concept, which should lower the probability of moral realism being true.
Right. Okay. So, also presumably naturalism is a type of objective fact of the matter that you're not arguing for.
Naturalism is a type of objective fact I'm not arguing for.
Yeah, like your view, your inductions also consist with talking about like actually, I don't think there's a single like, I don't think there's like a
I think the
single
naturalism, non-naturalism distinction I have there is just like the reason for not believing in naturalism is not really based on like some metaphysical disagreements really, but it's based off some semantic disagreements, right?
right. But I want to clarify, like, presumably you think that psychologists are talking about objective facts that matter, right?
Yeah, I think they're talking about objective facts, but the objective facts insofar as the propositions they're stating is not something which depends on their mental state.
Yeah, but I want to clarify that the psychologists, the semantics for psychological talk is the mental states. Now, obviously, those statements are objective, but they're talking about the subject, and in that sense, they're subject dependent. The subjectivist view is the same way, um, and so I'm actually confused as to how it even lowers the probability of psychology, because psychology is also like an objective, like you know, even from just excluding the induction and treating it equal to other kind of considerations. Psychology is also a type of field which talks about the subject, but is nonetheless like an objective field of study.
I agree with that. So agree with that. Like the psychology is for the main part an objective study, insofar as it is not something which is influenced by cognitive biases and emotions and so forth. But the argument I'm basically saying here is simply that yes, it would be the case that this is true, and we know this to be true because of all the evidential virtues which establishes why that is true. But there are no other evidential virtues which is establish why moral subjectivism is true. So all else being equal, it would be the case that moral subjectivism is not true, given the inductive data.
But if you're
So it
looking
would not
at
be an objection to the
subjectivism,
argument.
I'm actually confused how subjectivism wouldn't be considered a talk about an objective matter of fact. Like in what way?
In the way that like so hold on, so like I'm not saying like subjectivism is not talked about objective facts in the sense you're talking about. I'm just saying subjectivism would not be something which is compatible with the data, given the fact that under subjectivist model it would be the case that the reference which are referenced by the propositions of morality are going to be something which are not actually um psychological or mental states. And this is where like there's like a very controversial distinction between minimal moral realism and the moral subjectivism, because then given like your account of how like fiction and like subjectivism and so on, like a lot of people can take that version of like subjectivism or subjectivism as a whole to be just a form of realism, trivially speaking, because it is reporting an objective fact about the world as it pertains to like the mental states of someone, which is going to be the moral judgments.
Sure. So as long as we agree that there are these other kind of theses like minimal,
Ah,
we agree with subjectivism in that sense. I mean, I'm sure some types of naturalism would also fit into this kind of camp of not being excluded by the induction.
The
Um,
naturalism, non-naturalism disagreements I have, as I've said before, is just like a trivial disagreement. Like I don't really care about that part. The main disagreement I have here is just like the disagreement pertaining to like whether you believe that things like the predicates in moral language is going to be something which are identical metaphysically to mental states or not, right? And given
yeah,
the
but you're
current data
agreeing
we
that's
have available,
consistent.
it would be this
You agree that
that obviously like all in like for example if I have inductive data supporting proposition X, that's consistent with proposition not X, logically speaking. That's just going to be trivial.
okay, so we're agreeing that subjectivism is not excluded, does not explain anything any more than moral realism according
That's
to your
granted by
inductive case.
wait, hold on. I'm not saying it's not explained and hold on here a second. I'm saying that given the data,
Or
right,
sorry,
moral
more
realism
likely,
is the
sorry.
explanation. Yeah, but
Yeah,
you saying that it is you saying the data points here are consistent with subjectivism is trivial. Every inductive data you have to support a given proposition, that data is technically speaking logically consistent with the opposing hypothesis. But that's just not going to be evidence against the inductive data being probability raised in that specific
sorry, so
conversational
yeah, I want to
context.
clarify. Do you think that
Yep.
subjectivism has any lower probability than moral realism, given the
Yep,
induction?
given the data we have available, of course. Given the
How?
fact that the majority of evidence-based deliberations, which are non-psychological, which do not
Well,
include reference about psychological states.
now we're qualifying
Pardon?
that they can't be talking about psychology?
Of course, we've already like qualified this the entire time.
Well,
Given your account of like how
the
you're like
initial argument
cashing
was
out
that
truth making narrations,
the initial argument was that most fields of study are talking about,
report
objective
subjective
facts
facts,
relative to their domain. And obviously
report objective facts, yeah, about their domain, of
relative
course, yeah.
relative to the
Uh-huh.
psychological domain, they're talking about objective facts, but nonetheless the objective facts are about a subject.
Because the way you're treating objective facts are going to be things which are going to entail, right? And the way you're treating objective facts in the field of psychology is going to be something which would be incompatible with any of the data points.
Teresa!
You said in their respective domain. Are we changing this condition or no?
No.
Okay, so in
The
the
way in which
respective
I am
domain of
using this term is
psychology,
still unchanged.
well,
The
sure.
way
So then,
you're using the
in
term in the
respect,
conversation is what is making me
oh, so
tweak the way in which I'm using
in
the term for the sake of
in
actually
respect
being on the same page as you.
in respect to the psychological field of study, the objectivity in that domain is talking about the subject.
I'm saying that given the definition of objective facts you're going under, psychological deliberations would not report objective facts.
Given the definition I'm giving, psychological deliberations aren't objective facts.
Obviously the deliberations aren't the facts. I'm saying the things that you're talking about there are the things psychologists are talking about. Those facts,
Yeah, you're deliberating
under
about
your
objective
view, would
facts.
not be objective facts.
So I said that they're objective. I don't know why we're.
I'm not saying that you're not saying that they're
Yeah, you
objective.
did. You said under my
I'm saying
usage
that
they're not objective.
hold on. I'm saying that your definition of what is objective would entail these things not being objective facts.
Sorry, the definition that I gave was saying that psychologists are talking
You
about
construe objective facts to be facts which are going to be in a way where, or rather, the way in which I'm construing it, at least, is going to be facts which are not dependent on any truth makers, which are mental states.
Okay, and just to clarify, the usage for objective in your argument was different than the one I'm using?
I don't think so.
Okay, so the definition of objective, you think that psychologists are talking about objective facts, right?
Given your definition, no.
Well, that's the one that you use in your thesis, so it's not mine. It's the
No,
definition.
that's not the one I'm using in my thesis.
That's the question I just asked you.
When
Is
I'm
that
construing
different than the one
objective
you're using in your
facts, hold on.
thesis?
I've already clarified the way in which I'm using objective facts, right?
No, I actually don't understand what you mean when you say objective.
Okay, but that's not me not clarifying what I mean by
what did you mean when you said objective fact?
I mean objective facts in the colloquial sense, right? And in the sense where, as I've said before, the mental states in that, like the things that are referenced
Just
by
define
specific
objective.
proposition. Pardon?
Just define objective.
I thought you wanted me to define objective facts. If you want me to define objective, I'm just going to say something which is mind independent.
Define objective fact.
Okay, sure. I'll define objective. Something which is mind independent.
Right, and by objective fact, you mean what?
Okay, so I was going to define objective facts knowing that you'd have asked this question after I defined the word objective because you would not get a fully fleshed definition of objective facts. But for some reason you thought that was fucking unnecessary. So an objective fact is simply something like in this specific context is going to be the types of propositions which are true, and the predicates of those propositions, the primary predicates of those propositions, are not something which are trivially reducible to or identical to mental states.
Trivially reducible or identical to mental states.
Yeah, like emotional preferences, for example.
So psychologists aren't talking about objective facts under your view?
No, under my view, they would be talking about objective facts.
No, but
about the mental states.
Under the definition of objective you just laid out to me, they're not.
How so?
Because when they say that you're sad, like the sad predicate is mind independent. Or sorry, is mind dependent.
The sad predicate is mind dependent, correct?
Yeah, so that would follow from your definition that
the predicates I'm talking about. Hold on, by predicates, all I'm talking about there is just like the ideas, right? The ideas are conveyed by the proposition.
Yeah, so under your view, psychologists aren't talking about objective.
Yeah, it doesn't depend on their emotions and feelings.
Sorry, the thing being predicated under your view is not an objective fact.
Yeah, the way the psychologists say, for example, that you're sad, that's not a subjective feeling that they're expressing there.
We're not talking about the expression. We're talking about what's being predicated. What's being predicated is trivially reducible.
That's what they say the predicates to be.
It's trivially reducible down to a mental state.
Trivially reducible down to a mental state, but that's not the account of reducibility I'm going under.
What are you talking about?
I'm not talking about trivial reductionism.
Sorry, you said that something was not objective if it was trivially reducible down.
If it's not reducible to like a preference, for example, or other cognitive states, yeah.
Yeah. So when psychologists talk about people's emotions, those are trivially reducible down to mind-dependent things.
They're not reducible given my kind of reducibility in that statement.
Okay, what are the conditions for reducibility then?
The conditions of reducibility is blurry.
I believe you. What is if they're blurry? Like, what exactly is the difference between?
I can explicate. I can give examples of such. Though.
Well, what exactly is the difference? Just give me the difference through example.
Okay,
here.
So here's one obvious example. So like when I say, for example, that like hold on, I'll just explain.
It's not going to be clear. I promise, it's not going to be clear.
Look, you're like confused with the concept, and for some reason you're speaking over me. You're confused about what I mean by this. I'm trying to explain to you what I mean by this. Dude, you're confused about what I mean when I'm saying objective facts, correct? Dude, you literally said you don't know what I mean by this. Okay, so I'm gonna give an extensive example, right? Are you gonna give me an example? Well, how is you giving an example?
You in such a way where you can't weasel out and give me a ramble answer. Okay?
Really?
So yes, really. So the
Dude,
example
you're
I'm
confusing
thinking
the
of
fucking topic.
is if
What are you
I
talking
have a
about?
psychologist talking about
Okay,
their emotional
keep on rambling.
well-being, and then I have another
Uh-huh.
person who's a subjectivist, and they're talking about what's good and bad. What exactly is the difference in the thing they're predicating that makes one objective and one not? Unless you think they're both subjective
Yeah,
or they're both
so
objective.
the thing that's just gonna make it the case that like one is objective and one is not is gonna be the fact that like in one case, for example, if I'm saying that like you're sad, right? That proposition, the fact, the reason as to why that proposition is gonna be true, that is not gonna be something which is true in verge of like my emotions or what I think or what anyone else thinks except the person I'm talking about. Is gonna be true in verge of the actual predicate obtaining the feature of sadness. Whereas if I say, for example, that this particular ice cream tastes good, for example, that's going to be dependent on what I think. Or it's
Sorry,
going
so
to be
as long as
dependent
I'm
on what
speaking
like
about
other people
somebody's
prefer in that specific case as it
so
pertains
as
to the
long as I'm thinking
gastronomic
about it
facts.
in the third, as long as I'm thinking about it in the third person, it's objective. That's the idea.
I think that in that case it would be objective, yeah.
No, but that's the condition. Is that if I talk about someone's mental states in a third person way, then the statement becomes objective.
In the sense where you're just saying that something is like someone is sad.
Yeah, if I describe your mental
No,
states as a
no, that's not a
psychologist,
sufficient condition. No,
if sorry, if a psychologist says you are, or no, let's say this, let's say that here you are a psychologist, you're introspecting, and you say I'm sad. Do you think that statement's objective or not? Do you think that statement
I don't
references
think that statement
objective
is
facts?
objective in the sense I'm talking about now.
So a psychologist, if they were to proclaim I am sad,
I don't think like in that specific case, if we're going to talk about objective insofar as like the
so
person
judgment.
is going to be saying something which is expressive of their emotions and the predicate is their emotions, I don't think in that specific case it's going to be objective, but it is objective insofar as the relation between the I and sadness is going to be something which obtains not based on what I think about the matter.
Yeah, well, hold on. We can talk about
Yeah, the
whether or not
person
you
I just
think
satisfies the
on.
conditions of
Well, you
sadness
can
predicate.
hold on. I want to clarify. If somebody
Sure.
were to make a judgment about themselves, about their emotional states, you don't think that proposition would be expressing objective facts?
I don't think that proposition is expressing something which is objective. It is expressing objective facts, but it's not expressing something which is objective.
What's the difference?
The difference is that the thing I'm expressing there is going to be something which is emotions, which are things which are mental states, but the relation between those mental states and the subject, which is I, is going to be something which is not dependent on what I think, is going to be dependent on some obtaining relation.
But you think that the subjectivist, to clarify, under their semantics, they are talking about something objective?
I think they're not in the so far as they're indexing like the moral statements and the facts of those moral statements to their preferences, and they think the relations between them and the preferences are something which is going to be fixed by something mental.
So do you think that if a psychologist was in a room with their friend and themselves and they said, we are both sad, do you think that's an objective fact?
They're both bad or sad.
They're
Sure,
both
so
sad.
depends if the facts, for example, if the subject satisfies the predicate, right, in a way where the satisfaction relation is not dependent on what they think, then yeah, definitely.
Well, it's dependent on their emotions because it's a psychological statement.
Pardon?
The proposition is expressing facts about their mental state. So yeah, of course it depends on the mental states.
No, I'm saying that like the relation between the mental states and them, which are the subjects of the propositions, is not something which is based on the mental states. The satisfaction
What
relation
do you mean
there,
the
like
relation's
what
not based on the
causes this?
mental state?
Hold on. I'm saying what causes the satisfaction are not the mental states.
What?
There's a
Okay.
logical dependency relation between the satisfaction relation
Yeah, you
and
can
the
just
result,
say
which are the mental states.
you can just say that the
Hold on.
truth
Just to be
maker is
clear,
the fact that
just to be
one
clear, you're
has
doing
a
this like weird
relationship
thing where
with
you
the
interrupt the
predicate.
point because you're scared of
I'm
the actual
interrupting
point
because
that
it's
they make it,
unclear.
right? So
I'm
like
interrupting.
what I'm actually saying there is that the satisfaction relation
Uh-huh.
between some given some like the subject of the sentence and the predicate, right? There's a logical dependency relation between that satisfaction relation, right? And one of the relata which are going to be something which is mental, but the relata itself is not causing the satisfaction relation to
And
obtain for it to be a true proposition.
we're not talking about causality. I don't know why we're talking about that. We're trying to establish
That's what I'm
whether or not.
talking about.
I just want to. Okay, I don't know why you're talking about it then, because that's not relevant to the point.
Why would you
The point
not
being
know what
made
I'm
here.
talking about?
The point being made here is I'm trying to clarify what the conditions are under your usage for something to be an objective fact. And I want to clarify again because the answer wasn't clear. So
Do
when
you
I have
think
a
all
case
facts are
in a
truly objective?
psychologist in a room talking about himself and his friend, and he were to proclaim, "We are sad." Do you think that statement is expressing an objective fact? Just yes or no?
Yep.
Right. But if the psychologist were to be in a room and proclaim to himself, just him, "I'm sad," that's not an objective fact.
Both are objective facts. That's
Oh,
not
now we're
incompatible
backtracking.
with
You said it
anything I
wasn't
said
objective like
previously.
moments ago.
No?
You're
What are you
backtracking.
talking about?
You said it
I'm
wasn't.
not
You wasn't
backtracking, you're just
objective
not
moments ago.
tracking.
You
What
said
are
it
you
wasn't
saying?
objective under my sense.
I'm literally saying my definition and my count of what to determine
So now,
objective
okay,
facts.
you did
Hold on,
you
hold
did
on, hold
backtrack.
on, hold on.
Everyone
Shut
heard
up,
you back.
retard. Shut the fuck
I
up.
don't know. Oh, now we're
My
doing this. I don't know
definition,
why. I don't know
my
why you felt.
definition of
Wait.
objective facts,
I don't know
my
why you felt
definition
the
of
call to call
objective
me a
facts
retard after
would entail
backtracking
both
so
propositions being
obviously in front
objective
of all those people.
facts. What are you talking about?
You
You're
backtracked for an
straw
actual
man in the
act like
actual
I'm being
case, and
retarded.
then
Are you
addressing the
serious?
real issue on the
It was
side of
fucking
it.
obvious what happened. I pressed you on your weird, retarded uses of the word objective, and now you're trying to
It was so
backtrack
obvious
because it
that you
got
did
you into
not try
something
the
that was obviously
conversation, and as a
retarded.
result of that, you're
Let's
coping by
clarify.
continuously
Let's
interrupting
clarify.
my
I'm
points
going to be
to
really
try to
charitable.
paint some
I'm
like
going to be
rhetorical
really
leverage which does
charitable
not
and give you
exist
an
to it.
opportunity to recorrect yourself from saying
Dude,
something really retarded.
nobody
So
backtracked. The only thing that's happened is that you did not track the conversation. And as a result of this, you're like,
talked
you're
about,
freaking out
look,
right now.
it's
You're
fine.
freaking out because
Now
of the
that you've
fact you cannot give
clarified
an
the
actual
usage of
objection
the word
towards my view.
objective is
You have
what
no
you're using it.
objections.
I don't know why
You
you're
have no
talking over
objection to the
me.
inductive data that
Now
result on this
that
table.
you've
You're just freaking
clarified
out. You're
the
just
usage of
freaking
the
out
word
right now. You're
objective,
freaking out.
we can move on to a
You're
point.
freaking out because you can't
I'm
give me
not
the
freaking
objection. It's
out. I
crazy.
don't know why you're trying to apply
You're
rhetoric right now.
freaking
You
out right now. Of
backtrack.
course you are. The continuous
So
interruptions,
look,
you speaking over me, you not allowing me to get my
I'll be
point because you're
charitable to
scared
you,
to
and I'll
correct the
let you
conversation.
reconstruct your point.
You're disengaging. You're literally showing
Do you want
signs
to
of wanting to
reconstruct your point
disengage
or
from the
not, Apollo?
conversation after
Do you
being
want to
rhetorically and
reconstruct your point
substantively
or not?
teased upon.
Do you want to reconstruct your point or not? You
I
do?
don't need to reconstruct my point. You just need
You
to
do? You just
get another
fucking
chance of
backtrack.
tracking my point.
You just fucking backtrack this entire conversation.
How
So
did I
look, if
backtrack?
it's the case,
What is my definition
I
of
already explained
hold
this
on,
to you.
dude?
I'm not gonna
What is
fucking
my
explain this
condition
to you.
of an objective fact?
After I already
What was
fucking
my
explained this
condition
to
of
you,
an
it's fine.
objective fact?
I already explained this to you. So given your
You did not
new,
explain to me what my condition of an objective fact is.
reinvented usage of the word objective, it
Dude,
wouldn't
you're so
follow under
retarded.
that
It's actually
usage.
so embarrassing. Hold on. Are you
Sorry.
gonna explain to me what my
Follow,
condition of an objective
stop,
fact is?
stop. All right, well, everyone
Divinity,
fucking
just stop
heard you.
dodging. Just give me
I
the
don't know
response to
why
my
you're trying to
question.
wreck on history. Let's calm down.
I don't know
All
why you're
right.
trying to use these deflective
Given your
tactics
usage of
because
the
you
word
resented the
objective,
conversation. I just want to respond to my question. I just
please
want to respond to my question.
clarify to me why the subjectivist view is inconsistent, or sorry, is not has any lower probability than the moral realist view,
You're
according to
confused on
your
what you're
definition.
talking about. It's actually embarrassing. Okay, so I'm just gonna
Go
do
for
this
it.
one more time, and hopefully after I do this one more time, right, you try the point and realize how retarded you've been the entire of the conversation. Okay, it's like all I'm just saying here, buddy, is just simply that when I said something is an objective fact, right, I'm talking about the relation not being something which is causally dependent on like some sort of like emotional feelings, for example. If I say, for example, if I like I'll just give like an example. So like if I'm talking about like if I'm just like referring to like some like if you're like making like some statements about the world, for example, right, and this statement is just going to be like a mere expression of my emotion, right? That statement, right, that statement being quote unquote true, right, if it is actually something which is truth apt, is going to be something which is dependent on some psychological states, right? But the type of thing I'm talking about here in this case, by the way, is simply to say that given this context, right, the fact of the matter in the psychological case, the reason why that would be an objective fact is based on the fact that when they say like I'm sad, for example, or you're sad, right? That's not dependent on my emotions insofar as if I did not commit to this belief that this is true, then it would not be true. No, me believing or not believing in this being true, or anyone not believing in this being true, is not going to be something which influences the truth value of that proposition.
Holy shit, we just yapped around the entire proposition. So I just
Oh,
want to
really?
clarify.
You think
Yeah,
that
we
was a
did.
yapping?
So
You think that was a whole bunch of yap, huh? Wow, so impressive, bro. That was a great tracking ability you got there.
causally related understanding of objective that did not exist 30 minutes prior, it's fine. I'll ask you this
Oh,
case
really?
example again. Given that we have a subjectivist, explain to me under your view, how a subjectivist wouldn't be expressing objective.
Subjectivist would say, hold on, this is going to be the opposite inconsistency, right? Like a subjectivist would say something like it depends on like what sort of like subjective states they think like the moral facts are reducible to, right? So like if they think the moral facts are going to be influenced by like beliefs or like dispositions or like preferences or whatever, they're going to think that these things are going to be the things that causally influences the facts and so far as without these things existing, then there would not be the moral facts, right?
Yeah, presumably psychologists also depend on their beliefs and their opinions when they talk about them. That's the same thing.
No. The fact of the matter does not depend on their beliefs. You
Yeah, the
fucking
fact of
idiots.
the
So
matter of
guys,
what's consistent
so
with my beliefs,
hold on.
desires,
Do you not think it is?
preferences is
Hold
also
on. Do
consistent
you
with
think it is?
subjectivism.
Do you think it is impossible? Hold on. Do you think it is impossible for someone to be wrong about their emotional states?
No, of course not.
Okay, give nice concession. So you agree that the fact of the matter does
Not
not
a
depend on their
concession,
beliefs.
retard, because it's obvious
You
that when a
literally just said, you
psychologist is
dumb fuck. You
talking
literally
about
just
a
said that
psychologist, sorry, I don't know why you're
presumably
interrupting. Just
psychological
fucking say
states,
you don't know. Just say you don't
psychologists, when they're
know.
making
Fucking finish
psychological
you.
statements,
Look, it's
those
obvious.
things are dependent on
When a
their beliefs. But then you
psychologist,
agree a
sorry,
while ago.
you're
Hold
not
on.
even tracking this
You
fucking point
agree a
right now.
while
You're
ago
getting
that they
blown
do
the fuck
not
out. You
depend
aren't
on
even
beliefs.
aware of it because
You're
you're trying to
so
establish. You're
retarded.
yapping over me. Now
Holy
listen,
shit.
listen,
If
listen,
you
listen. You'll
agree,
fucking learn
if
something.
you
If you
agree
zip your lip, you'll
that
learn something.
you
Because
can
look,
have
I've
wrong
tolerated
beliefs
being
about
very respectful
psychological
during this
states,
retarded
then it would not
presentation
be
of
the
the
case
deductive case for
that
moralism.
presumably
I'm being really
psychological
respectful.
propositions
But
are going to be
I'm gonna
dependent on
explain
beliefs.
another fucking obvious issue with your view
I'm
under
just
your
gonna break
third
this down
usage
simply
of
for
the
you
word
because it's
objective.
just genuinely retarded,
Look,
right?
look,
So like
look,
you said a
quiet.
while
You want to
ago
learn
that
something new? You got to be
presumably
quiet.
psychological
I've
propositions
already
are going to be things
dismantled
which
your super
depends
argument. As everyone
on
heard it,
mental
how
state.
he's
You
fucking
said
frail as
this.
bones, weak as shit.
You're
You have not
so dumb.
defended it
Holy
very
shit, this
well.
is actually
So
so
after
embarrassing
this
for you. Like,
fucking third
I don't
go
even
under
know why
the
you're still going on this
definition of
conversation
objective,
after
I'm
getting
gonna
retarded
yet
for being
again fucking
destroyed like
explain to you
this.
the problem with your
All I'm
view.
just saying here to
So
you
here
right
we
now
go. So here
that
we go,
you just made the
Apollo.
claim.
Apollo, here we
You just
go.
made the claim.
Apollo,
Stop
here we
dodging me.
go. Oh,
You
here we
just
go.
made the
Oh,
claim.
are we done?
Stop
Are we
freaking
done?
out. Stop
Are we
freaking out.
done?
Just calm
We
down,
done?
Chim Cham.
Are we done? Are we
You
done?
made the claim.
No one believes I'm
You
freaking
made the
out.
claim.
So
I'm not
I'm
now.
actually
You're
being
so
very
stupid.
calm right now. You need to calm
You
down.
made the claim
You need to
that
calm down.
presumably, I don't know why you're trying to tone
Whether or
police
not
me.
you're being
You made
aggressive
the
is
claim
irrelevant.
that
Whether or not you're being a
psychological
spur.
statements,
You're being a
psychological
spur. You talk over
propositions,
me every time
presumably
I
are going to be
explode,
things which depends on
explode
beliefs.
open the
But then you
faucet in your
agreed, hold on, but then
well,
you
Paul, you gotta
agreed
stop talking.
that you can have a
Everyone was
fact
here for the
about the
conversation.
psychological
You guys
states
should
but
be
not
quiet.
belief.
You wanna
Anyway,
know why you're
you're
doing
an
this wrong or no?
idiot.
You gotta be quiet. Are we done? We're done. All right, cool. Look.
Of course it's
So
not.
let's continue.
Guys, can we take a shit break?
Look, the psychologist, if they make a statement about what they believe or the opinions they have or the emotions they have, all those different things, the truth of that proposition, right, depends on the mental state. Now,
It depends on
you
what they
could,
think
sorry, it
about
depends
the proposition.
if the proposition is talking about a belief they have. Maybe not
Is it
necessarily
dependent
the
on their mental
same,
states about the
not
proposition or just their mental
necessarily,
states in general?
not necessarily the same belief in
Okay,
question.
that's the
If
distinction.
I have, sorry, if I have a
Holy
subjective,
shit, this guy's
hold
so
on,
dumb.
Apollo, stop. If I have a subjectivist, say that something is good or bad for them, okay, and I have a psychologist say I desire X, I desire Y, whatever it is, those
Yep,
two statements under your
that's an
usage
objective
of the
fact.
word
Yeah,
under your usage of the word
that
objective,
statement
those
is not
two
true in
things
virtue of
are
your
both.
emotional preferences
Sorry,
or
if the
dispositions or beliefs about the
subjectivist
proposition.
takes the view, sorry, if the
Why are you
subjectivist
freaking out
takes
so
the
badly?
view,
Why are you freaking
I'm
out so
not
much?
fucking freaking out. You keep over talking me
Of
in an
course you're
attempt to
freaking
look
out.
rhetorical.
You're
You're getting
uncomposed right now.
backshotted right now, and you need to be quiet while I
I'm
explain the
gonna be
problem.
backshot right now, dude. You're
Let's
saying this like
continue.
you're
You're
saying
trying
this
to be
to cover your lack
rhetorical
of
again. Stop
sincerity.
trying to let
Dude,
Mr.
you're
Rhetoric
trying to
over here.
use
Stop
this
fucking
to
rhetoric me.
cover
You
up
need to
your
calm down.
lack of
Here we
confidence in
go.
the conversation.
If we
That's
take
completely
a
fine. That's
psychologist
completely fine. I
making a
appreciate the
judgment
tactic right there.
about their
Okay, but
opinions,
you just
beliefs,
realized a while
and
ago
I have
you
a
got caught into
subjectivist
a
who
rat
has
trap, and now
kind
you're
of
trying to freak
semantic
out by saying,
theory
"Oh, I'm
talking about
rhetorically
what's
backshotting
consistent
you.
with
I'm
their
backshotting the
preferences,
conversation, dog. You're not
then
backshotting
it's
shit,
the
dog.
case.
You're
It's the
getting
case
peed
that
on
they're
right
both
now. It's so
objective under
embarrassing
your
for
view.
you."
I've already explained this to you. I don't know why you're trying to overtalk me. It's obvious,
Okay,
Apollo.
dude, go on.
I've told you that under the semantic thesis of the subjectivism I just laid out,
Uh huh.
and then under the usage of the the psychologist talking about themselves, those two things in
Okay.
the same respect are objective according to your definition.
Nope.
That's not true. What's
My
the distinction?
definition is talking about truth makers being like if the truth makers are not the psychological states in respects to these things being the things which determines the relation, it would be the case that it is objective. So
The
for
dealing
example,
with the
if I say for
proposition
example that
isn't
I'm sad,
analytic
hold
and
on.
is not
When I say I'm
identity.
sad, hold on. When I'm
Right,
saying I'm
that's
sad,
not true.
that's an
That's also
objective fact. Hold on there a second. That is an objective fact
yep.
because the relation that is being satisfied there, it does not depend on my opinion on the relation or my belief about the relation or my
Yeah,
preference
that's true
towards
of
the relation.
subjectivism. That's fine. That's true of subjectivism.
That's true for subjectivism.
Yeah, I already laid out the semantic thesis in which that's true.
Wait, hold on. Do you think subjectivism necessarily makes the claim that the relations which are are obtained there are going to
I
be
already
something
told
which are
you
not
that I already
dependent.
gave you a
Hold on,
semantic
hold on.
thesis.
Answer my question. Stop running away from the question. I don't know why you're sprinting away from the question right now. All I'm just asking you is, do you
quote
believe?
unquote
Hold on. Do you
sprinting away from
believe?
the question because you're trying
Do
to
you
expose my
believe?
burden beyond what I fucking
Divinity.
said.
Do
Because you're
you
gonna
believe
what I said.
that a
Stop fucking
subjectivist
yapping around. I
necessarily
already
makes
gave
the
you the
claim?
semantic thesis
I
of
don't know why you're
subjectivism.
dodging and running away from the question I'm going to
I
ask
already
right now.
explained it to you,
Do
dumbass. I
you
just
make?
explained
Do
why
you
my
commit
answer
to the
is a
claim
retarded question.
that the more
I already gave you the
subjectivist
semantic thesis of the
necessarily
subjectivist I'm
asserts the
concerned with,
proposition,
and you're not talking
right,
about it.
that the relation
Are you gonna
in
fucking
moral
engage in the point or
sentences
not?
are
You're
not
running away.
things which depends on
You're
mental
hauling
states?
ass right now away from the point.
Retard, answer my
You're
question.
hauling ass
Is it
away
the
from the point.
case? Okay, I'm going to give you
Gave
6
you a
tries.
subjectivist thesis.
Try number
You're
1.
not engaging with it.
Is it the
Explain.
case
Nope.
that you believe that it is necessarily true under a subjectivist model that the proposition that's
I gave you an
expressed
example. I gave you an
about
example.
morality is going to be
I gave
something
you an
whereas the
example.
relation is not dependent on the mental states?
Fucking dodge. Engage with my
Is that a yes or no?
engage with
Is
my
that a
point.
yes or no?
Stop running
Is
away.
that a yes or
You
no
have
to my
this like
question?
fucking funny tendency to
Okay.
reinvent how the conversation is
Okay, I'm going to
supposed
give
to
you a
go.
second try.
I don't know
Is
why
it
you're
the
giving me
case?
advice right now. You need to engage with
Is
my
it the
point. You're running
case
away. You're fucking
that a
hauling ass
moral
right now. You
subjectivist
fucking packed your bags and left.
necessarily makes the
And engage
claim
with my point. It's not
that
that
the
fucking
truth
complicated.
relation, the
Follow.
truth making relation
Stop.
there
Stop. Stop.
is
Stop
dependent
rambling.
on their
Engage
mental
with my
states
point.
towards
Engage
the
with my
relation?
point. Engage with my point.
Okay, third try. Is it
Engage
the
with my point. I
case
don't know why you're fucking
that a
asking this
moral
question. Engage with my point.
subjectivist necessarily does not make that
All
claim?
right, we're not getting it. Engage with my point. This is fine.
Okay.
Give me an engage with my point, or we can't
Try
have a
number 4. Is it the case
Apollo, you're either answering
that
this
a moral
question or you're not engaging.
subjectivist
It's as simple as that.
necessarily does not make the claim?
You're either
Right?
engaging with my point or
And
not.
this is
You're not
just a
engaging.
clarification of my prior questions
You
because
either
I'm messing
engage
with
with my
words.
point or you
Is
don't
it,
engage
is
at
it
all.
the
It's not that
case
complicated.
that a moral subjectivist necessarily
Even the
does
most
not make the
irrational of
claim,
these can put two and
does
two
not
together,
make
but
the
for some
claim
reason this
that the
fucking retard
truth-making
is unable
relation
to track the
does not
conversation.
depend
He
on their
reinvents every
mental
50
states towards
minutes
the
after I
relation?
press him on his retarded,
Dude, are you going
idiosyncratic
to answer
use
my question?
of the word
That's
objective.
4 tries,
What's gonna
and
happen
that's your
is this
4th
guy will
occasion
either
of you dodging
engage
my
with my
question.
point or he's
I don't know why
not.
you're playing
So
dodgeball with me
you're
right
either
now.
gonna
Like, what are you
engage,
doing?
you're either gonna engage
Divinity,
with the
what are
point or
you
you're not gonna
doing?
engage at all.
What are you
Engage with
doing?
the
This
point.
is so humiliating for you, dog. Like,
It's
what are you
humiliating
doing?
for you, Apollo. This
You
is
think
why
repeating
every
back to
person
me what
I
I just said is
talk
going to make
to
it look
today
good
is
in the
gotten bitched by. You
conversation?
got bitched by Eric. You got bitched by the guy earlier. Getting
Bitch
bitched
by
by
Eric?
me,
How did I get
and
bitch
you'll
by Eric?
probably get bitched after the fact.
Dude,
So
you literally
I need
can't even
you to
understand what
go
my
ahead
position
and
is.
give
You
me
have
an
not even,
engagement.
you are not
Oh,
able
you
to
wanted to
be
debate meta because I struck a nerve. Did I
You're
strike a
unable
nerve?
to
I
even
did. Go ahead and
understand.
engage with my point. It's clear I
Hold on,
struck a
you
nerve.
literally
It's
just made
clear
the
I struck a
claim
nerve. It's
the
clear you're
more
getting blown out
subjectivist
right
would not
now
be
as well.
making that
I want
claim.
you to go ahead and
I just
engage
want
with
the
my
argument
point.
for why it
It's
wouldn't
clear
be the
you've been
case
fucking
that the
dodging.
more
You've been going
subjectivist
on
would
these
not be making
meta
that claim.
point rambles for 5 minutes in an
Divinity,
attempt
you
to
got destroyed
disengage
in this
with the point.
conversation
Go
so
ahead and
badly
engage with
that
my
you had to
point.
go on the meta
Go
about why I
ahead
got
and
destroyed
engage
by
with
other
my point.
people.
It's obvious
That
to
just
everyone
speaks
here. I'm not
volumes
engaging.
about the insecurity and
Engage with my
lack of
point.
confidence
No,
both
go
in
ahead and engage
rhetoric
with
and
my point,
substance.
Apollo. Go
You're
ahead and engage
trash
with my
as
point.
fuck. You're an
Go ahead
embarrassment.
and engage with
You're
my
a
point.
failure, bro.
Go ahead and engage with my
It's
point,
actually
Apollo.
so bad for
Are
you.
you not
So
engaging?
pathetic. Holy
Is
shit.
it look? You can just verbally concede right
It's
now if you don't want to
pathetically
continue talking.
horrendous how bad your performance is in this
You
conversation
want to
and how you
concede
came
right
with
now?
so much
It's just closing.
confidence just to
Okay,
leave the
it's obvious.
conversation with
It's
so
obvious.
little
That's fine.
confidence.
We'll
Okay?
let
So I just
everyone here
want you to
fucking
actually
decide
respond to
whether or
my
not you
question. I'm
decided
going
to
to give you
engage with
2
the
more
point. I
tries.
gave you
I'm
a
going to give you
specific
2
semantic thesis,
more
and you
tries.
decided to
I'm
derail
going to
by
give you
asking me
2
an
more
irrelevant question.
tries.
That's
Okay?
fine.
I'm
Go
going
ahead
to
and
give
engage
you
with my
2
point.
more tries. Okay?
No
So is
engaging.
it
It's
the
fine.
case?
No engaging.
So
It's
is it
fine.
the case
I
the
already
more
blew your back out in
subjectivist?
the
Why are you running?
conversation. Just go
Why
ahead
are you
and let's
running?
continue closing. Let's just move.
Okay, so is it the case that the more subjectivist, right,
Is this guy fucking?
necessarily does
Are you
not
still
make the
interested in having a
claim
conversation? Because
that
it
the
doesn't fucking work
relation
like
there
that.
is not dependent,
Apollo, this is your
is not
fucking fifth
dependent
time
on
yapping about
their
something. I told
dispositions
you
or
irrelevant.
desires or preferences?
You're so bad at tracking. Holy shit.
Bro, that's
Are
the
you
fifth
gonna
chance of
engage with
you
my point
literally.
or not?
That's the fifth
Apollo.
try, and that's the
Apollo.
fifth opportunity.
Engage with my
That's
point.
literally the fifth case, I
Engage
should
with
say,
my
of
point.
you dodging my question. And you're going to
Engage
talk
with
about me
my
looking
point.
embarrassing in the
Apollo, engage with my
conversation.
point. Engage with my point.
You don't even engage with my question. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
I'm not engaging with retarded questions that were
Because
raised out
you're
of a
running
failure
away
to
from the
track
question.
and you stupid
Because
fuck.
you're
I
running.
explained this to you if you would shut
Because
the
you're
hell up.
running. You literally just
I've
made the
already
stupid
explained
fucking
this fucking
claim
point to you.
that a
You
more
would get it if
subjectivist
you would shut
necessarily
up
would
and
not
listen
make
to
the
some someone smarter than you talking
You
about
literally
something
made
you
a
know nothing
comment
about.
which insinuates that
Oh,
more
please,
subjectivists would not make the claim
please engage
necessarily
my
given the
point. Or we
semantics
have
for
to
more
have a conversation.
subjectivism. You're an idiot.
Sorry, I decided I let you sit in silence, maybe to reflect on the retarded shit you had just said there. So, are you going to engage
Which
with the
retarded
point
shit
that
did
I
I
made?
say
Or
a while
no?
ago?
Here's
Which
what we're
retarded
gonna
shit
do.
did I
We're
say a
gonna
while ago?
get Apollo. You're gonna give your concluding statement. Then we're gonna get Divinity give the concluding statement, and then we're gonna run polls and
we
PSA. Go ahead.
take a shit break.
Who's the retard that just said that? So I can. Who's that?
That was me.
Yeah,
Wait,
I'm
wait,
gonna
hold on,
ban the
Goons. I
fuck
just
out of you.
want an answer from Divinity to my question.
Holy shit, this guy's still attempting to rhetoric me after we're moving to closing. Holy shit.
I'm not trying
You
to
can make
rhetoric you. I'm just
Wait,
all
wanting
the
an answer to
Divinity.
my question.
Divinity, just give
you
your
can make
closing
all
first.
the fucking points. You can make all the fucking points you want in your closing. It's fine.
Yeah, Divinity, give your concluding statement first.
Oh, am I giving? Oh, okay, wonderful. So, like, Apollo argues for robust realism. And Apollo specifically argues for some kind of universalism and also argues for some kind of non-naturalism. And his motivation for this is this induction, awful fucking argument in which, I think he said every other field of study, they study objective matter of facts when they, deliberate with evidence. And therefore, because moral deliberation deliberates with evidence, it's more likely that they're talking about objective matter of facts. The problem here and the fucking thing carrying the bag for Apollo is how he defines objective, which he moved throughout the conversation what its actually meaning was. So an obvious fucking parody, which raises concern, is psychology. Psychologists are talking about your mental state. States like, I'm sad, I have such and such opinion, I have such desire, whatever. Obviously, they're expressing facts about your mental states, and in that sense, it's, mind dependent. And originally, Apollo used this definition and then said, well, actually, psychologists aren't talking about objective matter of facts, and my induction lowers the probability of subjectivism talking about objective matter of facts. And then they tried doing this thing where I was using objective in a weird sense. And then I clarified that they're using objective in the exact same sense, and so they couldn't fucking do that anymore. And so then after I committed them to using the same definition, they then changed the meaning of the word objective halfway through and then said, well, psychologists are talking about an objective matter of fact because the truth maker for psychologists is this kind of relationship obtaining between the subject and the emotion, which, okay, fine, you can say it's objective, but then that wouldn't exclude you from a subjectivist view being able to be consistent in terms of probability raising with robust realism as they've given their view. But obviously they can't fucking do that, right? Because they're trying to make an argument for robust realism. And so then they made up this fucking distinction. They tried to yap around the point. They gave stuff like grammatically satisfactory conditions for truth making. The reference wasn't the truth maker. All this fucking nonsense. All of the bullshit. We can go through all of it one by one if someone's really fucking picky. But you'll notice when Apollo explains it, that's what's going to fucking happen. The point is this. They can't draw a satisfactory distinction between subjectivism's thesis in the way that I laid it out. I defined a specific thesis for subjectivism. I'll be damned if Apollo can reproduce it because he was yapping over me. But the subjectivism variant that I laid out contrasts its semantics with psychology. If he wants to maintain that psychologists making statements about themselves, other people, or people in the room that also include them, if he wants to maintain that those are talking about objective matter of facts, then the same type of relationship, exists in the semantics of the subjectivist thesis that I laid out, making it objective. And so, yeah, obviously they're fucking induction. We never got to this part because Apollo cut me off, but it's fine. The main point is this: subjectivism is consistent with the induction they gave, and so it's not actually, evidence in favor of the robust realist view. That's the point.
All right, base. Also, Apollo, someone's gonna talk to you after this, but okay, you can give your closing statement now. Apollo, go ahead.
Yo, can you hear me? Yeah, I just want you guys to first pay close attention to how enraged he is because he got completely destroyed in the conversation, right? So just to be clear in this, right? How we construed subjectivism initially is just going to be the thesis that the moral truths are identical to or dependent on preferences, emotional desires, for example, or preferences, or maybe some dispositions, some cognitive dispositions, which are maybe not preferences based, right? So now, obviously, we went over what truth is midway in the conversation and explained to him what truth actually is, given the fact that truth is going to be some satisfactory relation, right? And given that account, it would be the case that the psychological facts that we're talking about would be objective facts, because when you're saying that I'm sad or you're sad, for example, right? What makes that true, right? Like the relation there, right? That relation obtaining, right, to make that proposition true does not depend on my mental states towards the relation. So in other words, it is not going to be something which is identical to the mental states in that specific sense, the relation I'm talking about, nor is it going to be the case that the relation obtaining, which is what I'm really talking about there, when I'm talking about the relations insofar as something being true or not true, is not going to be something which depends on those mental states, right? And that's pretty fucking obvious for anyone who has like the IQ above like 73 at the very least, which this guy does not have, by the way. To be clear, he talked about in the beginning part of his little conclusion, he talked about how he's arguing for non-naturalism and so forth. That just points out how badly striking disability actually is. Because I was never arguing for non-naturalism, I was just arguing for robust moral realism. and I specifically talked about the triviality of the disagreement I have between a non-naturalist and the naturalist insofar as the semantical scheme is concerned. Right, so the non-naturalist thing is not something which is being argued for. That was just like a trivial semantic disagreement there. The inductive data that he's criticizing really is not consistent with like his account, or rather my account of objectivism and what I determine to be objective facts and non-objective facts. Now, with that being said, I even steel manned in the beginning part of the conversation. I even steel manned his definition. I granted his definition and said even under his definition, which you're talking about, like for example, the psychological, or if you're going to say that something is objective, if and only if like the thing which is being talked about is not going to be inclusive of mental predicates under that definition, it would still be the case that all is being equal, right? The psychological states, right, would most likely not be objective facts. The psychological facts, right, would most likely not be objective facts, right? But obviously they're independent things which affects the probability of that conclusion, which would make it the case that it is undeniably true that when I make psychological propositions about like someone being sad, like Divinity being sad after getting slanted this conversation, for example, that is going to be something which is an objective fact, right? So like they're independent factors which makes that more likely, but all is being equal, it would be unlikely for that to be true given the inductive data, which is not addressed in the conversation, by the way, because you're so focused on the semantical rat trap bullshit just to feel completely. Now, I don't think there's anything else to really address, but to just finish everything off, right? Given that account of objective facts, which is just simply to say that the truth relation or the satisfactory relation of a proposition to make something true, that would not be dependent on what I think about that relation or my preferences towards that relation or my disposition to grant that relation. Under that account, which are specified on numerous occasions in the conversation, I mean, it would not be the case that, or it would be the case that the psychological facts are objective facts, and it would not be incompatible with the data presented, which favors more realism being true. And given my definition of what, given his definition of an objective fact, really, all this being equal, it would be the case that the psychological facts are most likely not objective facts, and it would still be something which favors more realism. And he agreed that the probability of psychological facts being objective facts are not going to be something which is solely determined by the inductive data but other independent variables in the probability landscape, which would make it the case that this thing is more likely than not. He agreed with this proposition. So to simply appeal to psychological deliberations as a counterexample is fucking retarded, Divinity, and I hope you realize this. But that's my conclusion. He got fucking slammed with the conversation. Holy shit.
Alrighty, I posted polls in PSA. We're gonna have somebody else talk to Apollo real quick, but everyone go vote on the poll in PSA. Vote on who won. Should be out now. Yeah, go ahead. And then Owen, are you there? Is Owen still here?
Yeah, am I echoing?
Okay, no, you're good. Okay, hold on. Let me unmute Apollo. Wait, before we open this, get everyone in here. There's not enough votes. Everyone.